All right, ladies and gentlemen, followers of Pick Six Athletics, my pleasure today to welcome our guest, Shomari Williams, who I was first introduced. I actually wanted to surprise you with this, but I couldn't find it. I know it's somewhere upstairs. We've been moving the rooms around a bit because my sister had a couple kids. But the top prospects envelope that came in the mail with the leaf on it, if you've been around, you know what I'm talking about. When you get that in the mail, that's how you know you're elite. So you've been involved in coaching and playing. We got a good backstory, all these different levels that we'll get into. But I just want to say thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate your time. And there's definitely a lot to learn from you in terms of player, coach, a recruiter, and kind of just hearing it all is going to be incredibly valuable for the viewers that we got today.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me. And I probably have a headshot of you somewhere on my computer here. I can probably dig up. So from when you came to the camp, so I probably have it
You're
somewhere.
gonna see a nice buzz cut from back in the day, no beard, just yeah, that was a fun time. That was a good camp. I remember going to that and balling and doing the testing. I'm like, all right, this is good. And back then there wasn't as many events going on, so it was solid to get that experience. So right at the start, I'm definitely going to want to ask a lot about recruiting because that's kind of where we're at right now in terms of your role with UBC and what you've been posting recently on social media. So I think there's a lot to learn, a lot of value to give back to all the athletes or coaches watching this too. But I want to start just kind of going through your playing days, how we got to be a coach, and just take us through the journey. So if you'd like to start talking about your experience growing up, just playing at high school. And I watched a different interview you did a year ago, and I heard a couple of things on that. So there's a couple of good questions I'm going to get from there in terms of you're talking about how you'd be waking up every few hours to send out videotapes in terms of recruiting. Guys have
Yeah.
it a lot easier now. So why don't you just start off talking a little bit about at high school age, started playing football, and how you got into it and went to the next level from there.
Yeah. So I'm from Brampton, Ontario originally. So I went to North Park Secondary School there in Brampton. And, I think for me, I started playing football or tackle football in ninth grade or grade nine. And I kind of made a commitment to myself that I was going to try to get a scholarship to play Division I football. And I kind of really just worked hard throughout my whole high school career to kind of make that try to happen for me. At the end of high school, I didn't have a scholarship. And it just happened that I was actually signed to go to UBC, and something just kind of happened where it just ended up didn't work out, and I ended up going to a school in Quebec. So I went to CEGEP in Champlain in Lennoxville.
Mm-hmm.
So Champlain there, played 2 seasons there, and I ended up getting a full scholarship to the University of Houston. And so at Houston, I got a chance to play, graduated in about 3 years there, and I had a chance to go pro or a chance to kind of boost my draft stock. So I decided to come back to Queen's University, and I had a chance to play at Queen's. We won a Vanier Cup, so I got a nice little championship ring there, and I got a Conference USA championship ring at the University of Houston as well. And then I got a chance to go pro. So from my journey at Queen's, I got a chance to get drafted. Played 6 years in the pros, most of my career in Saskatchewan, and then from there got into coaching. So after I finished playing, I got into coaching a little bit. Then I got a chance to go back to Queens and coach with my defensive coordinator. I got a chance to go back to Queens with Coach Sheehan and work with him there. And then when he ended up leaving the program, I ended up just having to moved out here with my family and my girlfriend out here, and I had a chance to work with my defensive coordinator when I was playing at Queens, Pat Tracy, and I've just been out here ever since.
That's awesome. For whoever's watching and doesn't know, my first year at Queens, 2018, you're one of the coaches there. That's kind of where we started talking a little bit more. And I'm sure that was a cool experience getting back from you played at Queens, you're playing with these guys, and now you're kind of coaching. Like you said, Coach Sheehan was there, Coach Beck, Coach Ben was there too. So I'll talk a little bit more about Queens later because I want to hear more about that '09 team. But the first thing that I really want to ask is I've been seeing it all over social media, and I think it's just insane the turnout that you got there. Was this UBC Pro Day in terms of the prospects that were there? Love to hear about them, but more So how we got these NFL teams there, and kind of the future with youth sports, is it going to become a gateway to the NFL? Because we see you're able to get these NFL teams at that UBC Pro Day, and things are looking really good for UBC and these guys heading into the draft.
Yeah, yeah, and I think well, it's a testament to those guys, right? Like they're, obviously they're, you can't teach size, and they're both genetic freaks. But then they also worked extremely hard, right? So they also put in all the time and all the effort to kind of work to kind of build their profile or build a draft stock for themselves. And I think Theo having a chance to play at the Shrine game and then coming back to UBC, that really kind of helped his NFL chances. And then we were able to get, so many different NFL teams coming on campus. We had, teams come more than once, sending different scouts to come and see those guys on campus here. So that really kind of helped. And I think anytime you're able to kind of have scouts come out and check your players in practice throughout the
Mm-hmm.
year, when you do have a pro day, you're just going to have that much more interest. And we were able to kind of just, whenever scouts called, scouts have called me all the time. Now I got like all these NFL contacts in my phone, and, just kind of, sell the program, sell UBC, sell, those players' development, why we think they can kind of fit in the league, where they need to improve on. And I do think, just kind of going through the process and hosting a pro day, I think it is something that I think, at least at UBC or at least in U Sports, is something that we can run every year, and something that where we can attract NFL talent. And I think there is a lot of NFL talent here. And I'm building I'm building a program here with Coach Nell and the UBC staff to kind of make it a program where I think we're going to have those caliber type of players year in and year out to try to bring up more scouts and just kind of help keep growing the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd agree with that because I even know from a few years back, UBC wasn't as good of a program in terms of like the winning record. But now I was watching you guys at the Vanier and just seeing the success growing for the team. Could definitely see how you guys are on the rise. Plus all the things you're doing in terms of pro day, social media is popping, recruiting's going really good. You guys got my guy Dante Law, who I was training last summer in
Yeah,
Kingston.
yeah.
So I see things are definitely on the rise for UBC. Why do you think? Because I've noticed that there's been, I'm not sure if it's more, but there's definitely some guys every year who get invited to the NFL camps or to pro days. Buffalo, for example. Why do you think more teams in Canada don't have their own pro days? Is there any reason? Or they just rely on
But
the
well,
combine?
part of it too, it's like it's always going to be tough, right? To say you're just going to host a pro day, and you don't have any NFL scouts, coming to practices or any real NFL interest
Right.
throughout the year, it's going to be tough, right? So I don't think a lot of people are going to come if you haven't built a draft profile for yourself before the
Okay.
season. So it's really about, I think, the program and the school trying to build that draft profile for the graduating players, the same way how we try to do for CFL guys, right? And you have the East West Bowl and things like that. It's just trying to build and try to get their names out there that you think they're NFL caliber players and try to get them on NFL radars. And I think if enough teams show interest, then I think hosting your own pro day wouldn't be a bad deal. But I think sometimes going to some of those other schools, you can just piggyback on some of the other players that are there and still be in a good spot. So I think it's actually smart for some guys to go to some of those away pro days at Buffalo or Syracuse. They can just draw more eyes. But I think for us here at UBC, we were just in a fortunate situation where we had two, NFL caliber tackles, and we were fortunate that teams wanted to come up here and see them in person.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I feel you. It's more of having the interest already compared to just putting on a pro day and then trying to get all these guys interested. It's when you have those guys who are legit prospects, teams want to come see them.
Yeah, yeah, it's the same thing like recruiting, man. Like I tell kids all the time, like you can't get recruited. Your grade 11 year is going to be your most important year in
Hmm.
recruiting, right? So that year, your junior year, that's when you got to get all your offers. That's when you got to go to all your camps. That's when you got to build a buzz, and then your senior season is just kind of validating what you did in your junior season. And it's the same thing for what I've learned. It's the same thing for guys in the NFL. You got to get guys on campus when they're juniors, when they're rising seniors, and you got to let NFL scouts and programs and teams know about them before they become seniors. And that's how you can build that profile so that now their senior season, the scouts have time to now come on campus. It's time to watch film, and they're not just finding out about you at your pro
Right.
day. They've already been studying you throughout the year.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And even thinking when I was getting recruited back in 2017 to the first month or two of 2018, I signed on, it was February 14th of the year, and I was the second guy to sign for that class. But now they have pretty much the whole class out of the way, speaking for Queens at least, before that date even happens. Like everything just seems like it's becoming a lot earlier now. So I'd say for anybody getting recruited, you got to get on it as early as you can because everything's just happening a lot faster. Guys for the next class are already signed. Coaches got their spreadsheets and they're looking at everything and the coming up in the future compared to when I was being picked up. It was a lot more. Even like a few months before the end of school is not that many guys are signed now. So would you agree with that? Like you guys are on top of things a lot earlier now.
Yeah, yeah, you have to be, right? Because admissions deadline, getting guys into school, getting guys to
Yeah,
apply, all those things kind of really matter. So you really try to build it out, build out your recruiting class, and try. Like for us, we want to try to be done by the end of February. By the end of February, we want to try to be done all the recruits, all of our recruiting, so that you can start building on the next class. Right? It takes a long time to evaluate players. For us, it's probably close to 1,000 guys in each recruiting class that I got to kind of go
Oh
through and
wow.
watch all their film and study them and stuff like that. And then we have camps and all that stuff. So the earlier I can get started on those guys, the better it is, right? So I'm a big believer. I cast as wide of a net as I can and then try to narrow it down from
Hmm.
there. So I try to evaluate everybody so I don't miss on a
Yeah,
prospect, or at least say this. Coach Noah asked me like, "Who's this guy? How did we didn't get him?" I was like, "Oh, I know him. He wasn't the right fit for us, or
yeah.
you never want to get caught off guard." So
Yeah, I feel you because you don't want to miss any talent. You see him popping off at another school, and you're like, "Damn, where'd this guy come from? I don't even know
yeah,
him."
yeah. There's probably a story of a couple guys that like they're doing well at other schools, and maybe I didn't recruit them as hard as I can, and like I'm like, yeah, I can't let that happen anymore. So
So you go from 1,000 to I imagine the class is probably around 30 at when they start signing, somewhere give or take from there. What are some of the things where you go from? Actually, one of the coaches I was talking to wanted me to ask this question. When you're looking for a prospect, what are some of the main things that you evaluate? Now, obviously, you got to make sure they're athletic enough to play and they're actually, good enough to be productive or eventually develop into a good player. But in terms of who they are as a person, just kind of other things that you look at when you're going from 1,000 all the way down to the guys you want to take who you're confident with moving forwards.
yeah, so I think it's always going to be the academic side of things is always going to be huge,
Hmm.
right? Even when I have that big list, a lot of guys will uncheck the box because they don't fit academically with what we want to do here at
Right.
UBC, or they're just not academic fits. And then I think just getting a chance to talk to guys, just getting to know them a little bit better, then you kind of feel like if it's the right person within the program, right? We as a program here, Coach Nell is a big believer on trying to get guys to go pro. He wants guys who want, to take football to the next
Hmm.
level and who want to try to build on their legacy here as a program. So we're always looking for guys who, want to win championships, and then guys who want to, get the most out of football. And the most for us is trying to get you to the pros. So it really kind of holds our whole program accountable when we can do that. Yeah, so it's just about finding guys who have that right fit, right? So guys who want to go pro. So that really kind of for us, it's a big thing for us because we can hold guys accountable, right? We can make sure guys are accountable, showing up, doing what they have to do in the weight room, doing what they have to do to kind of become pros, and then we want guys who want to graduate. So obviously in football, you're dealing with 18-year-olds. Not everybody knows what they want to do in life, but we want to kind of we want guys who at least they know they want to graduate. And I think knowing that you want to graduate, then you can always kind of push guys because hey, there's a bigger purpose for why you're here, right? When you're studying at 2 a.m., you always can remind them that man, you're here for a bigger reason than that. So those are kind of two of the big things we're always kind of looking for from guys who want to graduate and guys who want to take football to the furthest level. And that just allows us to kind of push guys to the limit to kind of get the most out of them, at least for us on the football field.
Right. I like that because I could picture whether somebody is very talented or still needs a lot more work. If you're always painting the picture of you want to go pro, you want to be like these guys who you got going to the NFL, no matter where they're at, they're always going to want to keep reaching for another level because, when you get to that next level, it's just going to be really hard again. All the talent's going to be really good. So
Mhm.
that's good. I like that. Going for guys who want to go pro because they're always going to be reaching for the top of it.
Yeah, yeah, and part of going pro is graduating.
Mhm.
Part of, like, because
You
you're
got to be
not football's
eligible.
kind
That's
of
the
old
one thing
school.
that might get
You
you
got to be
if you're
eligible,
not
right?
smart.
So you got to pass classes.
Yeah,
So you might not know what you want to do when you graduate, but as long as you're working towards graduation, that's a good thing.
yeah. You
And
definitely got to stay
and
eligible.
guys usually figure it out in year 2 and 3, so they'll usually figure out what they want to do.
Yeah, after a couple years in the system. So with these guys, are there some things? Maybe it's something you see on social media. If you want to think of any examples, you don't have to share them. But maybe things on visits that you've seen with your recruits. But anything you see with guys who you're recruiting that make it an immediate no.
Yeah, like I would never say an immediate no because you always want to get to know the person, right, and see if you can kind of deal with any issues that they have. You're still dealing with little kids,
Right.
right? Like, or not little kids, but you're still dealing
17,
with young men
16 year
or
olds.
17-year-old guys. So I never want to get them completely off the list. And I always believe guys need second chances, and guys sometimes need to be taught, right, or
Right.
learn this is how you kind of do things. But of course, there's going to be behaviors or some things that guys will do on visits that it's just not going to be a good fit for them. And we'll tell the guys when they come on visits that we don't think it's going to be a good fit for you, or just even throughout the conversations, we'll kind of tell guys like this might not be the best place for you, academically, or we just might not be the right fit. So, but yeah, like if it's like I don't want to say like I've sent many a messages to kids about what they post and be like, hey man, you got to
Smart
represent
resident.
yourself
Mm-hmm.
represent yourself the right way, right? Before you can, I tell kids all the time, before you can represent the name on the front of the jersey, you have to represent the name on your back, right? So you got to make sure that you're upholding yourself and your family legacy to the right standards before you can even represent the T-birds on the front of this
Mm-hmm.
jersey. So I'll always kind of message kids and remind them that, and you just see if you can work through it with kids. But I never want to be the guy who's like, oh, this kid posted something and like he's done, he's
Yeah.
dead to me. I never want to be that guy.
Yeah, I feel that. That's good. Make sure that because you never know somebody's backstory, or maybe just the way they brought up something could mean something different in terms of whatever you see online. So that's good with in terms of the second chances and learning a bit more about them first. So I respect that. For guys who are on social media or they're trying to get recruited, also whoever's watching, if you head to your Instagram, I believe it's Show Will, or we'll link it somewhere.
Yeah, show Will
Yeah,
33.
so there's been a lot of great content, especially recently, in terms of tips for getting recruited and kind of some steps to take to get yourself noticed. So, with that being said, for guys who are trying to get recruited, is there anything you notice of things that would hurt their chances to get eyeballs on them? A couple things I've seen is guys with handles that's like some random letters, or they want to make it look cool, but it's not their name, so it's hard to find. Or some accounts that go to message, but you can't unless you follow them. So, would you have some tips for guys in terms of just how they handle their social media to get seen by more coaches, whether it's Instagram or Twitter or whatever is important?
Yeah, and I think those are two big ones, right? Making sure you're easily if I type in your name, I can find you online, and you're not having a random name or a nickname on there. So I think having your first name's important. I think and having your DMs open, right? So coaches will always want to try to reach out to you. So having your DMs open, and there's always something like I've never stressed about it too much, but it's always something about like when you have a private account that like maybe you are doing something you shouldn't be
Yeah.
doing. And so I think like you should be comfortable enough, and everybody's social media is different. And
Some
like,
guys have a
but I
football
think
page too.
yeah, you could have your own football page if you feel like you want to have something private and personal for yourself too, which is completely fine. But I think like always kind of you want to have as much access to coaches as possible, right? So I think having a public profile, having your DMs open, having a name that's easily searchable is always like the best steps for you at least to get started in recruiting. And links to your huddle tape or
Mhm.
your YouTube tape. It's always good to have in your bio. So if coach wants to see it, see more of you, they can, and it's easily searchable. So I think always having those things readily available for coaches is super important.
Yeah, that's a great tip too with the highlight tape because I know a couple of guys, the guys I'm training, I want to look through their profiles and give them any tips I can. And I know it's a couple, they have the story highlights now on Instagram. it'd be like a football one, and you click a few times, and then they're linked to the tapes there. But if you're a coach who's looking at 1,000 guys like you're talking about, is you're not going to have time to go and click through and try hard to find everyone's tape. So you definitely want it to be easy to see in their face, so they don't have to actually try and find your tape and search you up on all these different things when you could make it a lot easier for them.
Yeah, yeah. That's what you want to think of is like, how can I make this as easy as possible for coaches to find out everything they need to know about me? And that's how you always want to look at it, and how do you want to approach it?
Now, in terms of reaching out to coaches, going to camps, how would you say? So I'm grade 11. It's my most important year. Let's say either the season's about to start or it's ended. I got some good film. How should I go about finding the school and starting that recruiting process for somebody who hasn't begun it yet?
Yeah, so I think I can only really speak to what I think is the easiest process for us is like most schools will have a recruiting form, right? A
Yeah.
database where you can kind of put in all your information. So I think it's trying to find that database. If it's easily available on the school's website, it's getting yourself to fill out that database, that questionnaire. And I think that's probably, at least for me, it's the most important step because I have so many kids who message me. I can't get back to all
Uh,
the messages. It just gets to be too much. But one thing I do know is like if you're in our recruiting database, like I'll eventually have to watch your film. Like I'll eventually have to get through because I got to go through
mhm.
everybody, and that's the only place that I have um, every single every single highlight tape or all your information in one space. So for me, that's always the most important thing. But I think even initially just emailing universities once you have your film done and it's a good highlight film, starting to email schools, and then I think going to camps. If you have a chance to go to camps, I think that's just super huge. The chance to kind of work in front of just be coached by coaches and just work in front of them is tremendous for us. It's actually been probably one of our biggest things in recruiting these last few years. The amount of guys that we've signed or started to recruit just based off of their camp performance has been like astronomical for us. I think last year was probably 80% of the kids that we recruited from Canadian high school kids came to one of our
Oh,
camps.
wow.
And so it's for us and for me especially. It's like you know the chance to kind of see you run, see you jump, see how explosive you are, how good of an athlete you are is it's make or break, right? We were talking about some other players that you're training, and if they didn't come to the camp, they probably wouldn't have got recruited by us. But because they came to the camp and we got to see how athletic they were, now I have to pound the table to Coach Snell and be like, hey man, like even if the film isn't as great as it needs to be, the athlete is there. And when I talk about like how I recruit guys athletically, I look, at least football wise, I look at three things. Are you the right athlete to play at this level? Do you have the right mentality? Like we kind of talked about, the right mentality to kind of play at this level, and then like how good of you are as a football player. Like I believe in our coaching staff and the guys that we have here that we can develop you to be the best football player. But I just got to make sure I have the right athletes with the right mentality, and then I can coach up the rest of them. So, we get a lot of guys at our camps who are probably athletes first and football players second, and those are the guys that we love because we feel like we can coach them to become good football players down the road.
Yeah. That's awesome. Lots of great value there. So we got definitely every school you're trying to go to, fill out that recruiting form, get in the database. I remember going through that when I was getting recruited, and you just got to type it, put in all the information, but it's all worth it because that's the only way you could guarantee yourself to be in the system, like you said. And then the other thing is camps, because when I was going through it, there wasn't as many back then, so I don't have as much knowledge on it. So hearing you say that, it's really good. One, for me to know more, and whoever's watching it too, because I can imagine some guys you watch your tape and maybe you're a receiver, but your quarterback isn't good at throwing, or if you play in a league where the level of play is pretty low, it's hard for coaches to get a good evaluation of how you actually are compared to other high level players. So the camp's a great way to show in front of the coaches, get coached up by them, let them see your athletic ability, how you play football. And the other thing that's underrated too, and a few tips for guys going into camps is coaches can tell a lot about who you are as a person, your mentality. Some things we'd say at Queens, like if guys are, leaving garbage, walking after they finish a drill, or not finishing the rep, giving up, not paying attention when coaches are talking. There's a lot you can tell just from evaluating a guy, seeing how he is at practice or at the camp that you can't see in a highlight tape or anything that's not in person. So I imagine you feel the same way. You could tell a lot about their character also from the camps.
Like if I go through my roster here and just tell you all the kids who went through camps and like not even that like, but it's just if it was any other situation or if it was just based on their highlight film, they may or may not have been recruited, but the fact that you got a chance to see them compete, right? The chance that you got to see them be a leader, right? The chance that you got to see them hustle, you got to see them run and see them jump, and now they just check more boxes for you and allow you to recruit them. Like all those little things matter, and I know it's like especially for kids, there's like a lot of camps going on. But I think anytime you have a chance to go to a camp with university coaches or in front of university coaches, I think it's just you can really open up a lot of doors for yourself by doing that. So I think it's just a great investment for you if you want to try to go to the next level. And I would even advise going to camps while you're younger, right? Don't wait until your grade 11 year or your senior year to go.
Mm-hmm.
Go there from when you're younger so you can learn about the different camp experiences, just kind of grow and learn. And now that when you are in that year where you have to be recruited or you're trying to get recruited, you're just that much more prepared for everything that's going to come in the camp setting.
Right. You already got a background for it. You're in the coach's database and you're just so much more prepared for it as you go in the
Mm-hmm.
future. One thing we talked about, so you're saying you evaluate the athletes, football players, and make sure they have the right mentality. How, as a coach, as a recruiting coordinator, what are a couple of things that you can tell if somebody has the right mentality? Because I imagine you have meetings with a guy, you talk to him, and they might be, saying the right things, but if you get them in person, maybe you see that they're not as hard worker as you thought, or they have a bad attitude. What are kind of the things you look for to preemptively see who has a good mentality or who has one that wouldn't fit the standard as well at your school?
Yeah, and I think it's just getting to know them as much as you can, right? And I think for me, it's just really listening, right? It's just asking probing questions and just trying to listen, right? And just trying to see where they are, where they want to go, and how do they plan on getting there, right? And just kind of listening to the answers that they're giving you to kind of see if they are going to have the right mentality. See, what adversity have they overcome in their life, and how do they kind of battle back? How do they handle those hardships, or how do they handle not being the best player on their team, and just kind of as you kind of get to talk to kids more and more, you just kind of get to learn a lot more about them. And then a lot of times too, it's just sometimes it's even just seeing what they post on social media. You'll meet kids who every other weekend, they're posting something of them training or them getting stronger, and you can kind of just slowly, as you're kind of following them, see their progression or just see how they're kind of building up and how important it is, football is to them. And I think it's just kind of you just try to get in as much information as you can. And I think by the time you're ready to kind of feel like if he's a good fit, you just have enough information that, yeah, he's the right guy, or no, he's not the right guy.
That makes a lot of sense. Getting to know more from the conversations, you get a good feel for it as you have all more of these conversations over time. And then pretty much everything, like you said, could be an evaluation. So seeing social media, how they are at the camps, and I'm sure as experienced as
Sometimes
you
even
are,
talking to coaches, right? Talking to their coaches, right? Reaching out.
coach group.
Sometimes if I'm
Do
really,
you do
really
that a
unsure
lot,
about a
or is
guy,
that kind of like just for some players? I'm not really sure how that works.
some players, I think, it's just a little bit different here. With Canada, a lot of coaches are, volunteer coaches. They're high school coaches or they're teachers, so they might not have as much time for you.
Right.
But sometimes, you'll have to, like for me now, I've been in the space long enough. Like I'll know somebody that knows that kid somewhere, right? It might not be his high school coach, but it might be his trainer.
Right.
It might be, his OSFL coach. It might just somebody that I'll know that knows him, and it's really just trying to probe them a little bit and see if, hey, is this kid going to be a right fit?
Yeah. Yeah, you got lots of connections in the football world, and that'll actually lead me into this next question here. So, switch mentality? You heard of that, Chris?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Chris,
yeah. So I
hey,
wanted to ask because I know even when you were playing and as a younger coach, how we were running or how you were running the top prospects, and then the other one I'm not too familiar with, but it was to get guys recruited to the states. So you had your
Mhm.
two businesses going on. What would you say to guys who are athletes in terms of like Chris would say for switch mentality, expanding their identity and just being more than just an athlete.
Yeah, I think it's super important, right? I think it's very important trying to have a life outside of football, and football is just kind of what you do. It's not who you are. So you always want to try to build on that and have something outside of football, because what I tell kids, like, football usually ends before you want it to. So you got to be prepared for when it ends, right? So it's not one of those sports where you can kind of ride off into the sunset. You're probably, you run out of eligibility, you get cut or something like that. So you always gonna want to have a backup plan. So I think it's super important to always kind of have that and kind of build on that as you're kind of doing it. I do think though that if you are a pro, you still have to focus on being a pro, right? So you always gotta probably can't juggle too many hats
Right.
outside of football if you want to be the best football player you can be. But I think you always have to be prepared and slowly start building on what your life's going to look like after football. Because you're probably going to be done at 35, and you got your whole life. If you're
Yeah.
great at 35, and you got your whole life ahead of you after that. So you got to be prepared for when that day
That's
comes.
great advice too, because even the guys who play as long as you can, I don't know how long Brady's career, like even if you're 40, 35, like you're saying, even though the average career is just a few years, you still have so many years of your life after football. So it's what do you do now with your life after? So I like what you're saying in terms of kind of setting yourself up and having a plan for where you're going to go to after. Did you always want to get into coaching? Because I could tell that you're always into recruiting and coaching guys based off those businesses you're running. Or did you have like a different job that you wanted but kind of fell into this path?
Well, I actually probably never really wanted to be a
Oh,
coach. I
really?
actually really just like recruiting, and I like scouting. So I really like that, and that's kind of what I really liked. And it just ended up that you know when I first got to Queens, I was just a recruiting coordinator, so I didn't have to coach. I thought, oh, this is perfect. And then when I came out here to UBC, I had to start coaching, and then the coaching part, it's actually been way better than I thought. Way more fun than I thought, and just kind of helping guys and growing guys and developing players has been like really eye opening for me. So I actually really enjoy it now. But I've always kind of just really liked scouting, understanding what makes a good football player, the NFL combine and all those metrics. I've always kind of been super interested in how guys can go from the one level to the next level. And it just kind of, the coaching part of it grew off of that.
That's funny to hear. I would have expected that you were planning to be a
Yeah, yeah.
coach or
Yeah, you get to the CFL and it's like coaches are here just sleeping in their office and all that stuff. You're like, I'll never want to do that. And now I'm probably like the guy who's
yeah.
close to
Do you
doing
see how hard the
that.
coaches work? And even speaking of my experience at Queens with Coach Ben or Coach Beck, any of the guys really just during training camp, especially just seeing how little they sleep and you're just working so hard. So I feel you on that.
Yeah, yeah. But it's actually it's it's a lot of work. I don't want to say it's not, but it's actually not that bad, man. If you enjoy it and you like it, it's actually really good. And you got to have a supportive family, a supportive culture, a supportive spouse to kind of make all those things happen. But I think once you do have all those things, I think coaching is a great profession for anybody who wants to help and give back and help kind of lead the next generation of players.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits with it in terms of like what you were saying a bit earlier, how if you're in a good position, you can kind of I say not you're not that flexible because there's always a lot that is asked for you as a coach. But if you're on a coaching staff, you got different times of the year where you're more busy to less busy with the off season. Although as a recruiter, you're probably just always super busy. But I'm sure seeing
Always.
that the guys develop, being a part of it, and giving guys the opportunities that they deserve coming out of high school, I'm sure that's a great feeling to be a part of that whole process.
Oh yeah, like when I talk about like just seeing you, right? Like you came to my camp. I can probably pull up your scouting report. I can probably find it somewhere in one of my books, and then to kind of see how you progress, right? Or what I thought of you then, and then how you kind of progress, or how you kind of grown and mature. And it's like, okay, well, you're exactly the player who I thought you'd be. You validated my life, and then even now being in university, I had a chance to coach a first round draft pick. So seeing for where he started from when I first started coaching with him to now how he kind of left and now he's a first round draft pick. That's a great feeling. And then seeing those two guys who thought had all the potential in the world when you first saw them in 2018 or 2019 when I first saw Theo and Gio to now having the chance to kind of be NFL, possibly draft picks or at least get signed. That's a great feeling to kind of just help guys and just be a part of their process and their growth and help them kind of get to that next level.
Yeah, and I feel like that's always a big thing with football is the people around you because you play, you put in all the work, you got to hit people, which is a lot of fun. But really, when you're in the
Yeah.
locker room, a part of the team, it's just about the brotherhood. And then I imagine as you kind of progress through, become a coach, it's still all about the people around you and just trying to be a part of that team, driving forwards, always trying to help everybody else win, and just always being a team player in that sense.
Yeah, yeah, man, yeah, and I think that brotherhood in that locker room is something that you never get back once you're gone, and it's a great feeling, man. So I think anytime you can be around a bunch group of guys, and you want to be in service of people and help people, I think sports and just coaching in general is such a great profession to be in if you're a people led person.
Awesome. All right, some great advice for the young coaches out there. There's one more thing I want to ask in terms of recruiting. We're going to flip it around a little bit. Now, if I'm a player who is trying to be recruited, who has a few different options out there, what should I look at in terms of choosing a school that's the best fit for me?
Yeah, I think there's always going to be, a few things, right? I think it's going to be like, the financially how much it's going to cost, socially, does it have all the right things for you that you want socially, like outside of
Right.
school, right? The personal stuff, academically, is it going to be the right fit for you academically in terms of what, the degree path you want to take, the career path you want to go upon, and then athletically, is it the right program for you? Athletically, in terms of like, are they a champion? Like, it's just all going to depend on each student athlete on what they kind of want, and I think those are some of the boxes you just got to check. Is it the right academic fit, the right athletic fit, the right personal, family kind of social fit, and then is it the right financial fit? Those are all things you got to kind of look at,
Yeah,
right? I think sometimes guys get caught up in buildings and how nice the campus is and all that stuff, but like
sure.
those things don't really matter. It's really going to be like, we got a older locker room here at Queens, and we're still able to kind of win on that. Like, obviously those things are cool to have. I'd love to have it because it's great for recruiting, but at the end of the day, it doesn't make you ultimately win. Doesn't make you win an extra game because you have a cool locker
Hmm.
room, right? It's always going to be, you know, athletically the coaches that you have, how they're going to develop you, you know, the type of academic support you're going to have, how they're going to help you get to the job that you have, what are they going to do for you after your job, is it the right social environment, are the guys on the team, do you vibe well with them, are they the right kind of guys that you kind of fit with, and then financially, especially for us, we recruit a lot of players outside the province, so we got to make sure that it's a good financial fit for them to come out here. So those are all the things you got to always kind of look at when you're thinking about a school out of province or just any school in general.
Yeah, that's awesome advice right there. Anybody listening should go back, watch that again, and make sure you got it right because it is very true. I remember when I was going through it, when I made a little kind of pros and cons list and just weighing out the different features for it in terms of academics, which program's the best fit, athletics, not only who has the best team, but who do you see yourself as where you're going to develop a lot, making sure that they have had a coaching staff or going to have a coaching staff where you could develop under um, the campus, making sure it's all a good fit. So, a ton of different factors to evaluate there. So, definitely great advice there. A little bit more about you as a player. Now, I'd love to hear about because I remember we'd be shown even a couple full games of the Yates Cup or Mitchell Bowl. I want to hear a little bit more about this 2009 season in terms of what it was like coming from Houston and then just balling out, crushing it. I remember looking at the stats and you were just going crazy in those playoff games. What was that experience like coming back to Canada, going up to Queens, and playing there for a year, getting that ring, and being a part of that 2009 team?
Yeah, and what I'd say is like playing the NCAA was super fun, right? I got a chance to play against Alabama, like 90,000 people saying roll tide. You have police escort. Got a chance to play against Oregon, so I got a chance to travel all
Yeah, that
across
is
the U.S.
crazy.
playing against
To us, a big
big
game is like
time
8,000
programs.
people.
Yeah, but I would say honestly, the funnest probably experience I had of playing football was probably that 2009 year, right? Where I felt like, just such a great group of guys, and I just remember coming back to playing in Canada, and I just remember asking guys, my craziest story is like asking guys what their degrees were. And, guys are telling me I'm going to become a doctor, I'm going to become a lawyer, I'm going to become a dentist. And it was just like 180, like it was just completely different than what I had at Houston. Completely different. Everybody was here as like, I'm going to go to the league in 3 years.
Yeah,
I'm going to go sociology. And I got to Queens, and everybody had these big plans outside of football, and I always really respected that. And then we were a really good team as well. So I thought like these guys had such a life outside of football, but then they were still dedicated and focused on being a football team. So I thought it was the funnest opportunity or the funnest football experience I had. Obviously, we won a lot of games, so that made it fun. But I thought like just the camaraderie, the guys who were on the team, just the atmosphere, how the campus kind of came alive for us. I just thought it was like such a great year of football, at least for me.
that's one thing you notice too watching the Golden Mile, which is the documentary on you guys, and talking because at the alumni events, there's always a bunch of guys from the '09 team. Is that group is such a close knit group of guys, and you could tell definitely how there was all that camaraderie, and you guys were playing for each other. And I love seeing everybody with the rings. Pretty disappointed we weren't able to get one these past years, but yeah, I don't know. That's great to hear about because you could really see it just from my experience in terms of watching it or interacting with guys, how close that group was. And I'm sure that helped you guys win on game day because it's one thing if you have a bunch of star players who are just playing for themselves compared to guys who are really playing for the team and trying to see everybody win and coming together in those tight games and pulling off those those close
Yeah,
games like that Yates Cup. Those last three games were all crazy to watch.
they were all they like, yeah, a lot of hearts beating fast in those games, and but I think just I remember sitting there. I can't remember what we were down on in the Vanier Cup, and I just remember sitting there at halftime, and like Coach Ian comes in, and it was basically just like, well, we know what we got to do, and everybody kind of got up and was like, yeah, you're right, we know what we got to do, and went out there the second half and found a way to kind of get it done. But I think just that whole year, that whole season of fighting through adversity. I think I want to say Danny got hurt the first couple of games, I think it was, and we had to battle through adversity there. We lost our last game against Laurier. We had to battle through that, and like it's just everything kind of just build up for us to kind of win a championship, and everything just kind of fell together perfectly for us.
Yeah, great story. Ended it off with a ring. Yeah, that's awesome. Would you say, now you touched on it a little bit, but comparing your time in NCAA to U Sports, are there any different similarities or differences that kind of stood out there? Now, I know obviously the
Yeah,
big crowds and everything, but just in terms of like football and how guys go about it, guys, like you're saying, more guys trying to go pro compared to guys who have a lot of stuff outside of football that they're trying to accomplish. What were some of the things you noticed?
yeah, I think that's a big one, right? I think, and it's not even that like the guys at Queens didn't want to go pro. It's just that they went to school. School was important to them, right? It wasn't just to play football. They actually wanted to do something outside of football, and I thought that was always super cool and super important, just to kind of see that you know, you can do both, right? You can be a really good student and have something outside of football and still be a great football player, which I think we were as a great team. And I think like the other part too is just obviously like the glitz and the glamour side of things are all different. Obviously there's being on full scholarship to having to pay for school is always going to be
Hmm.
different. But I thought like man, like there's just a level of like love of the game, and I think a level of like just fun and atmosphere, and just like you can play with guys you went to high school with, and I think you got to play against guys you've been playing against your whole life. I always thought that was fun, and the one big difference I would say is like in the NCAA, just showing up every day, you'd probably get better, right? If you just went to practice and you went to lifts and you just showed up, you're probably getting better each day. And I always felt like in U Sports, just because it doesn't have the same depth as it does in the
Right,
NCAA, if you want to be a great player, you're going to have to do a little bit extra, right? You'll be as good as you want to be in U Sports, but I think like the same opportunities are there if you want to be great. And I think it's a testament to the guys that we even have on our team this year, where I think like they wanted to be great football players, and so they did as much extra stuff as they can to kind of lead them in a position to go to the NFL. And I think that's the same thing for a lot of programs here in U Sports. That if that's your end goal and you weren't able to go to that Power Five school or get that big Division 1 scholarship, it shouldn't deter you, right? You just know that, hey, if you're here in youth sports, you just got to continue to work and continue to grind to become the best player that you can be. And then when your draft year's up, let the chips fall where they may, but give yourself the best chance.
Mm, I love it. And Coach Cannon, who I'm sure you're familiar with, is I was
Yeah.
training with him back in grade 12 and kind of preparing me for uni. One thing he always said was, if you're really good, they're going to find you wherever you're at. And watching you in, I was just watching it before this, but a past interview you did, you're saying that if there was one regret, it'd be letting, not chasing the goal of going D1 as long to prolong yourself, start your professional journey younger so you could play longer as a pro. So what advice would you give to guys who are kind of in that same boat? Should I go to CEGEP? Should I go to JUCO? Should I, just go to a U Sports school, D1, kind of who are, because some guys I know are, they're either in grade 12 and they got offers to Canada, or they want to stay back a year, maybe go to CEGEP for a year or two, and then try to go to the States as well. What advice would you have for guys in that boat?
Everybody's situation is going to be different, right? And everybody's going to, but what I'd always say is like, it all depends on what your end goal is. If your end goal is, hey, coach, I want to play professional football, then you should get to the pros as young as you can, right? If you're a pro at 21 or a pro at 22, your pro career can be that much longer, right? So I think getting to the pros is like that's just the be all and end all, right? And I think even if your goal is the NFL, if you can play 3 years in the CFL, do well, and now you're 25 and you want to get an NFL shot, that's a lot easier to swallow than to be a 25-year-old rookie, right?
Right.
Because you tried to, you did 2 years of JUCO or you did this, or and then you came back to U
And then
Sports and
NFL
all.
teams might not want you if you're plus 3, 28 years in the CFL.
Yeah, yeah. Like so, there's just so I always it's always tough because everybody thinks that when you're telling them to come to U Sports instead of reclassing, they think you're a hater and you're trying to hate on their dreams, which obviously I'm not, but I just think there's a different path. If your end goal, it just all depends on your end goal, right? If your end goal is, hey, coach, I don't even care about playing pro, I just want to play Division 1, then maybe your best route is to just keep trying to for that to happen. But if you have a bigger goal outside the NCAA, then there's an opportunity for you here in Canada that I think you can pursue, right? And I think getting to the pros as young as you can just prolongs that career, gives you a longer pension, which you might not even think about when you're 17 years old,
But it pays
and you
off.
just it just that's super important, right? To have a 10-year career because you got in at 22, than to have a 4-year career because you got in at 26. And so I think that's kind of always my advice to my younger self is like I should have just tried to become a professional a little bit younger than I
Yeah,
did.
that's great input because even one of the guys I was training him this winter, I explained that he should get advice from someone else because I knew after grade 12 I was just going to go to school here. But he was talking about JUCO or U Sports, kind of what I was explaining earlier. But that's a whole other perspective on it, which I didn't really consider because if you want to play pro, you want to start it earlier so your body's not breaking down. So if you want to go to CFL, NFL, you got time to do that. So thank you for sharing that perspective. That's definitely helpful and just gives me another way to look at it in terms of what guys should do. And like you said, it's all about figuring out what your end goal is and then kind of working it back. Plus, you're showing right now with at UBC how even if your end goal is NFL or D1, whatever, like you could still find a pathway there. Just even at being in Canada, when you're good enough,
Mhm.
they'll find you.
Yeah, man. Like, and there's some work that you got to do yourself too to kind of make sure that they are finding you, right? I don't think it's something where it's like you can just build it and everybody's gonna
Right.
come. Those guys putting up. We have to put in some work for them. To kind of make NFL teams know about them and try to get their name out there. But I think there is some truth to like, hey, man, if you're balling out here, scouts will come and scouts will come. If you're good enough, scouts will come, right? If you tell them about yourself and you have the measurables, the height, weight, speed that they're looking for, they'll come and at least take a look, right? So I think that's the truth. But I do think there's a lot more players just in Canada that should be getting the same opportunities that are Theo and Gio have gotten, right? And I think just us as coaches and as youth sports program, I think we can do a better job of like showcasing those players, right? Like showcasing those guys, because we'll see it out every year in the CFL. There's guys in the CFL who who are getting drafted from youth sports who fit all the size, weight, speed, measurables of the NFL, and so there's no reason why they couldn't get an NFL look, right? Maybe they're not NFL players, but they should have still
At
got a
least get the
look.
look.
And I think that's what we have to do as a program and as football in Canada is make sure that any player that stays here in Canada to play, that they're at least going to get a look at an NFL chance if they have the measurables that NFL teams are looking
And
for.
would that just be their coaches or agent making sure they're reaching out to NFL teams, or should there be anything else that they do to set that up?
Well, I think it's everybody, right? It's everybody. It's if they have an agent younger, it's them. It's the university programs. It's youth sports. It's us just trying to really rally around the talent that we have here, believing in the talent that we have here, and trying to just promote the talent that we have here. So I think it's this every part of football in
Right.
Canada needs to kind of come around that to make sure that
Promote the game.
our players are we're growing the game and that our players are just as good as anybody else.
Okay, awesome. Now, thank you for that. A little bit similar to that, for guys who are going through this process, going through the draft, you yourself drafted number one overall. What tips would you give for that process of you're in that boat of probably getting taken pro, but you got to perform at combine or draft what's coming up? Do you have any expertise or wisdom in terms of going through that process when you know that you're probably going to become a pro in the near future?
Yeah, and I think the biggest advice you'd have is, man, is like if you want to go pro, you got to start as early as possible, right? And everything that you do to kind of make sure that when that opportunity comes for you to come to the combine, for you to get drafted, like you've done everything you can to kind of get to that point, right? So I think it's just how you approach the game with professionalism, how you prepare, how you kind of approach each week in the football season. It's just making sure that you know your end goal from when you're, sophomore, freshman, whatever it is, your first year, and you're doing everything you can so that when those opportunities arrive for you, that you're not missing the boat on anything. And I think it's just you got to kind of enjoy the process. You got to kind of learn as much as you can. Ask the right questions. Make sure you have the right team around you, and just go through the process and just be as prepared as you can when you're at the combine. When you're meeting with teams and you're interviewing, just make sure you're as prepared. And that's you having an agent to kind of talk to teams, somebody, going to bat for you. But I think it's just going to be everything you've done up to that point. You got to make sure it's solid so that when that opportunity comes, you're in the best position possible.
Awesome. Lots about preparation, knowing your goals. Common themes here for the interview. Seems like these are definitely some of the keys you're given to success. And I could see how even if the only thing is you have the goal of going pro, how as you're progressing through your university experience, college experience, how that alone in the back of your head is going to be that much more beneficial in terms of your mentality, because you're not going to just be going through the motions and lifts. You're not just going to be getting work in and hitting the field. You're going to be trying to be the best you can, get the most out of every single rep, because you know that final goal is to go pro. And whether it's you're just, for a random example, you're in your first year and your team's working on shuttle runs, not just running through it, but asking questions, watching the guys who are combine prepping, going through the process already. So by the time it counts for you, you're already as good as you can be at that point from doing it. So great advice in terms of starting early, and whether it's recruiting, whether it's trying to go pro, I can see how the earlier you start, the more you prepare, can always be one of those kind of success secrets for just getting what you want in life.
Yeah, man. And the other part too is like you got to invest in yourself, right? Like you got to invest in yourself, and I know like not everybody has a lot of money, but some things to be the best player, you might have to pay a little bit of money, right? You might have to pay to buy, good groceries so you eat
Right.
healthy, right? You might have to take out the student loan so you can go to school and pay for your classes so you're not eating ramen noodles every day. So everything you got to take it as if your end goal is to become a pro, you got to invest in yourself. And that's everything, right? It could be financially, it could be mentally, it could be physically. You just got to make sure that, you're, I think Alonzo is always talking about daily deposits, right? You're
Yes,
making sure
sir.
your daily deposits are good. So So I think it's those are all key things you got to have, right? So you always got to keep depositing something so that when it's time for you to, get that return on investment, you've invested as much in yourself so you can get the biggest return possible.
That's what I'm noticing now more than ever as I'm training with these guys in the pros and I can see how they go about it. The sleep, what you eat. I mean, in college is one thing because you might be studying till 2 a.m., have to wake up for a 6 to lift, but it's really those small things that add up. So, like we are saying, those daily deposits, making sure that you're doing everything right and just stacking it up as you go. And really, even if you're somebody who isn't as fortunate financially, who maybe can't, afford eating the best food every day or having top end training, there's so much you can control in terms of making sure I'm not wasting time just, on social media when you could be sleeping, when you could be working out, not going to, all the parties or whatever's going on. So that's good. There's definitely a lot of things that you can control wherever you're at to make sure we're headed in the right direction. One thing I wanted to ask about, and this was another thing from the interview I saw you did. You were talking about coming in as a young player. You were athletically dominant, but your technique wasn't quite there. And then you end up asking the O lineman later on why you couldn't beat him. And he said he had a book on you. He's been scouting you. He knows what you're going to do at certain situations. So, talk a little bit about how important it is to get in the film, have a plan of action, and not just relying only on your athleticism. As somebody with the experience of going through the pros and seeing at these different levels how guys prepare for situations, not just kind of going in and relying on what they can do.
Yeah, and I think every athlete, your athleticism is going to catch up with you at some point, right? So, and I think it's going to be, what's in between your ears is gonna eventually separate you, right? So I think at some point, right, it might be high school where you're not you're the best athlete in middle school and high school. Now you're not the best athlete. It's going to be you got to be the smartest player. In college, you might have been the best athlete, but now in college you're not the best player or you're not the most athletic anymore. You got to be a smart player. So I think you got to always be prepared for that moment of like somebody else. Your athleticism is just not going to get it done for you, and you got to study, right? You got to be prepared. You got to understand concepts, understand scheme, understand what they're trying to do. The offense or the defense, and what you have to kind of do to execute it, and that just comes with preparation and doing those investments in yourself, right? Spending that extra 20 minutes of watching film, maybe going in, speaking to the coach to kind of understand offense and defense a little bit better. Understand who your opponent is, what can beat him, what can't beat him, what he's going to rely on. So it's really just about being
Mm-hmm.
prepared, right? And I think at some point everybody's going to get to a point where somebody's as good as an athlete, or you can't just out athlete them, and it's going to be how smart you are that's going to allow you to be successful at that point.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Getting that extra coaching time, getting that extra film. Even I could tell you just from I was at Queens for 6 years, which I'm sure you can imagine. There's a lot of film and coaching points at that time.
Yeah.
Is you notice just the more you learn, the more the game slows down, the more you can pay attention to those small details. It just helps so much to set yourself up, set your defense up to make good plays. And yeah, I think preparation is just a huge thing that unfortunately guys don't learn a lot about until I'd say after high school in terms of watching film and studying their opponents, knowing their strengths, the offensive tendencies. And that's something that I'm trying to do and spread more of. It's just kind of teaching the game, but it's just there's so much more that goes into it, like you're saying, compared to just being an athlete. Because when it catches up to you, you gotta whoever's a more technical athlete. Direct coach from Coach Snyder, direct quote. Coach Snyder would say it all the time. If you got two even athletes, then whoever's more technical is going to win the battle. So we'd always be focused on technique and just making sure that it's the same principle here. Whenever you have a bunch of different things to control, if it's in recruiting, if it's trying to go pro, if it's becoming the best football player you can, you always want to maximize everything you can. So be as technical as you can, be as athletic as you can, and just always trying to become the best you can to reach those goals, hopefully of going pro or whatever it is, like we were saying before. So I just
And it doesn't even have to be. It doesn't even have to be going pro. I think one things you'll learn just about playing university sports is just how prepared you are for the corporate world or for a job after football. Right, the fact that you can take constructive criticism, have teamwork skills, work in groups. There's just so many things that I think football will give you outside of of being a pro, just being a part of that university environment that I think is just so tremendous. That you'll kind of see as you're kind of ending your football career or ending your university career, and then if you get a chance to play pro, but once you start getting into the real world life, you'll start seeing, man, you'll have a coworker who can't handle the boss telling them that she did a good job. You're like, man, I hear that every single day. Every rep, I heard
You
that,
get yelled
and
at.
those things are invaluable. Yeah, and so I think those things are super important for guys. Just the skills that you'll learn, and just the deposits, right? Understanding that nothing's going to come easy, and that you're going to have to work for it. Those are things when you're working in your post football career are going to be so valuable to you that I don't think most people understand it until they're in the workforce working.
Yeah, and I even from summer internships, I could see being kind of in the workforce, if it's just summer jobs, even working alongside other people. There's so much you learn from the game you could take away from it. You already said them, but accountability, being able to get coached up, being on time is one of the big things at Queens
Mm-hmm.
because you can't give projects in late. Like you got to make sure you got all your preparation in during the week to make sure we're ready for the game. And there's just so many skills that go into it. And it's like Chris talked about with switch mentality, how it's not all about just the sport. You're taking so much away from it, and then you got to apply that to the rest of your life. And whether, like you said, trying to go pro or just trying to be the best you can at that college, university level, if you're applying yourself fully, then you're just going to take so much more away from it compared to just going through the motions and letting it play out however it does.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. All right. Well, I got just a few questions here where you just hit that hour mark. So I'm sure you're a
Yeah.
busy guy. You got some places to go. There's a few other things I wanted to ask though. What's so we were just talking about this I think yesterday, but in terms of NIL, what's kind of your takes on that? And now I didn't even know this, but if you're a Canadian in NCAA, you can't be making NIL money from America. That's how it works.
hmm Yeah. So, it's just you can't be on a student visa in America and have a job,
Right.
and it's the same thing for international students that come here. You can't be an international student here and then have a full time job here. So, yeah, like I
Okay.
don't know, like I understand. I understand. Like it's not. I know everybody thinks it's punishing the student athletes and punishing, but I think like when you understand like immigration and
Yeah,
economics and all
that
those
makes more sense
things,
from that perspective
they're just not like they're not incentivized to make sure that
because the country doesn't want to
that
take it away from their citizens.
so I get why athletes are upset, but like I don't see it changing anytime
Yeah,
soon. It's unfortunate, but like I don't see it. Yeah, it's just not going to
yeah,
change.
that makes more sense. Okay, thoughts on that? Thoughts on the transfer portal? How it works? It's been going crazy these past couple of years, and then after that, what do you think about U Sports if it should implement a transfer portal so you don't have to sit out a year unless you're graduating? Or I think there's a couple like mental health or a couple reasons why you could not sit out a year. But what do you think about the whole transfer portal situation? And should that come over to Canada?
Yeah, so the first thing, just even about NIL, like I do think it's really good. Anytime student athletes can kind of make money, and do endorsements. We do things at UBC where everybody's going to play Madden this year, and we've had a bunch of our guys who are actually in the Madden game. So pretty much, like UBC athletes are in the game, like literally from it, right? And they all got
Wait.
paid really well.
On what team? How does that work?
No, so like they're in the green suit, so they wear the mocap, so they're doing the tackling.
Oh, like
So all
their animations go into the game, but
Yeah, they're animation. So
oh
like,
shit, I didn't see
we
that
had
coming.
D lineman put on the whole gear, tackle somebody, get the sack, do the celebration. Those are pretty much our quarterbacks. Like everything is
That's so
there's a
cool.
lot of UBC athletes in the game this year. From or that in Madden and then in college football, both of those games, it's a lot of UBC athletes who are doing all the animations from it. So
I,
so I do
like,
think that's name, image, and likeness. So I think it's great for athletes to kind of have a chance to kind of make money. Um, when it comes to the transfer portal, I just think I think the purpose of university sports is to graduate, is ultimately to graduate. I know it's a lot different in the U.S. where I think it's a lot different there, but I just don't think you're setting kids up for success if they're not on track or not on pace to graduate. Just even if you are in the NFL and even if you play 3 years in the NFL and you're just a minimum roster guy, you're still gonna have to work. So I like to not have a degree and to come out of football. It's not the best thing in the world. So I don't think it's something that I do respect kids that should be able to transfer and they should be able to look at different leaving their schools and all those things. But I think there has to always be a pathway to kind of graduation because I think it's important for kids to kind of graduate, especially in Canada. There's no way that a kid should go to school, spend $20,000 a year because he doesn't get a full scholarship, transferred 4 times, and doesn't get a degree. That's wild. So yeah, I wouldn't be a fan of a transfer portal, but I do think there probably should be some easier ways for some kids to transfer just based on each one's circumstance. But I think a case by case scenario is probably the best way that we have it now.
Right.
Maybe I think the AD's got to be a little bit nicer on who they let transfer, but
Yeah, I agree
that's
with you
kind of
there
my
because
take.
you wouldn't want a big mess of everybody transferring around just because your coach was mad at them or whatever. But one great example was we had a player Benoit who was playing at FX out east, and from my understanding, you take Eng at FX for 3 years, and then you're supposed to go to another school to finish your degree. So he was coming to Queens to finish his degree, and he was supposed to be allowed to play last year, whenever it was. But then he ended up not being eligible for that year, which in that situation is crazy because he literally has to transfer out of his school. But I think most of the people do
Yeah,
that, go to a school that doesn't have sports anyways, or football at least. So that would be a great situation where transfers should be allowed compared to guys just going around.
yeah. Well, it's really just the U Sports ADs that got to decide on the transfer, so they just can be nicer on how they let some of the transfers go by. But
All right. Okay. All right. Last thing I wanted to ask here, I'm just looking at my little list. Actually, one more thing first. I heard you talk about this in the other interview, and I kind of want you to just share the story again. But in terms of when you were going through the recruiting process in high school, what your workout schedule was like, and how you're getting your film to coaches so they can evaluate you.
oh, yeah. So for me, well, so when I went to end up going to CEGEP, it was right around the times when DVDs just got made, right? So actually can remember like one year I had to make VHS tapes and dub VHS tapes, and then one year I had to make DVDs or CDs. And so literally what happened is we would go to practice, we'd go to lift to go to practice and all that stuff, but I didn't have enough time in the night. It took like it took like an hour or two to make a DVD. So literally what I had to do is like overnight, I would have to just set my alarm, wake up, put a new DVD in, burn it, wake up, put a new DVD in, and I'd probably get 3 or 4 done in a night. And then in the morning I'd wake up and go to the post office and send them out to 4 different schools. And I ended up sending out probably 120. I think there was probably 120 Division 1 schools at the time. So I sent that out to 120 schools, and then I called every single school and asked them, "Hey, man, did you get my tape? And did you like it? Did you not like it?" And I got most schools told me no until I got to a school that told me yes. So it's just really about a big part of recruiting too is just understanding no and handling rejection. And for me, it's like when a school told me no, it was actually like a relief because they weren't holding on to me, they weren't kind of stringing me along. So it was always good to kind of hear the no because then I knew I could focus on another school.
Hmm.
And it's something that I want to try to do better at being a recruiter is like when I find kids who might not be a good fit or if I know they're not going to be a good fit, is tell them as quickly as I can that this is not going to be the right spot for you so they can focus on schools that are a better fit for them.
Right. That is awesome just to hear about. You had to wake up multiple times throughout the night, burn these discs, send them in the mail, call the schools. Now think about how easy it is. You can just copy and paste all these emails, send it out.
Yeah.
So much easier, and guys still aren't doing it.
Still are doing it or send me an email with the wrong school in there and all that
Yeah,
stuff. So that
that's one thing you got
happens.
to make sure you do is if you're emailing and copying your templates, just making sure that it's personalized for them. You got the right coach, it's spelt right, and it's definitely got the right school name in there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's funny. All right, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate all of this. the last thing I want to ask you is just about guys watching this, recruits. This could even be a little snippet that we post separate, but your little pitch on UBC, what you guys got going on, why somebody should want to go, and kind of all the benefits that you guys got at your school. I'd love to give you the opportunity to share some information for guys who might not know as much about it. I know for me, being in Ontario, social media wasn't as big 6, 7 years ago, so I didn't even look at UBC really. So, what are just some of the things you'd share to guys going through the process?
Yeah, man. For us at UBC, I think it's pretty simple, man. I think it's like if you want an elite academic experience, we're the top 35 school in the world. One of the top universities in the world, top business program, top I think like engineering program. There's just a list of the top programs that we are in the world. So if you want an elite academics experience and then an elite athletic experience, where I think like even though we are a really good academic school, we also win championships here. We're just coming off a Vanier Cup run where we won the Mitchell Bowl and we won the Vanier Cup. I think UBC is a great place for you. I think we check those two boxes, and we're in a city that's one of the coolest places where in the morning you can go skiing, and then in the afternoon you can go down to the beach. So if all those things are something that you want, an elite academic and elite athletic experience, I think UBC could be a great fit for anybody.
All right, there you have it. All right, it sounds really good, and I know you guys got it's a great area out there. Some guys might not want to go just because it's a lot of travels. But the thing is, if you're on a plane or if you're gonna drive somewhere, like it's really not that different when you add it up, anyways. So, um,
No, man, and I think like as you kind of go through the recruiting process with us, you'll kind of learn that like it's, a plane ride in today's day and age isn't as bad as it seems.
no,
And like I say, man, it's what do you want out of football, right? If you want to go to a school, you want to get a good degree at a school. Not that there's schools in Canada have bad degrees, but if you want to get an elite education, and then you want that elite academic athletic experience where you have a chance to get developed by, Coach Nell, who's won probably or has been in the Vanier Cup probably more than any coach. You want to play for Coach Tracy if you're on defense, who's put more guys in the pros than anybody else. Coach Nil, I think, has the longest active streak of guys in the CFL. So I think if you want those things, it's a great fit for you, right? Great fit for you if you want those two things. And then but it might not be the right personal fit where maybe being away from home, being away from your family is not what you want to do. And then which is fine, right? You got to shoot as many shots. We can't get everybody, but I think if you do want those two things, and then you want to experience something different and move away and build a new network and build a new legacy for yourself somewhere else, it's a great option for a lot of student athletes, and that's why we have a lot of success. I just got to dig and find the right ones.
yeah, man, there you go, and especially going through some of those numbers with the success of the other coaches there, that's something that I mean, even right now, I'm like, oh wow, that's impressive there. All right. Well, thank you very much for everything we got. We went through your story, which is amazing in itself, just to hear about all the tips for being recruited, for recruiting players, and then also everything from the player aspect of it as well. So, unless you got any last words, I just want to say thank you very much for your time. I've been looking forward to talking with you because there's just so many different things we could talk about and learn from, and from the camps you were holding years ago to what you got going on now. It's always great just to reconnect, hear about your story, and just how you're continuing on your journey through life and always giving back to the football community.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it so much, man. And like I commented on your post, you're one of the few guys from Mississauga I respect as a football player. Usually, guys from Saga, I don't even recruit guys from Saga anymore. so,
That was
so
my
I can
favorite
always
comment
respect.
on that.
Oh, man, but I appreciate it, man, and I think you're doing big things, man. I watch from afar, and I really respect the brand that you're kind of growing and what you're trying to do, and I wish you nothing but success, man.
All right. All right. Appreciate it very much. Thank you once again. And hope you have a good night over there. And best of luck with this upcoming season. Hopefully it's Queens and UBC in the Vanier Cup.
At Richardson Stadium, that would be
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
good.
I'm definitely going to be there for that.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
All right.
Bye bye.